When you take a Forge Fiend and a Mauler Fiend, place them together in a room with some mood lighting, and then play some suitably romantic music, the result will be a brand new Venomcrawler, striking a decent balance between sheer slapping power and medium range doom. It's the ability to regenerate wounds that made me choose a swarm of Venomcrawlers over a squad of Dreadnoughts. These 3 Venomcrawlers will form the tip of a brand new Spearhead detachment, consisting of 3 Venomcrawlers, 3 Forge Fiends, and a Lord Discordant as the HQ choice. The purpose of this Spearhead detachment is to back up a small but stylish Slaneshi Chaos Knight house we've started building recently. While regenerating some wounds might not seem as if it would have much of an overall effect on the game, I think if there's even a slim chance for a unit to survive an improbable amount of damage, and then go on to change the course of a battle, then it's probably worth it for the handful of times that this will occur. I like the idea of being able to troll like a Necron player while using a bunch of demon engines which are much less complicated to paint than Chaos Knights and much less numerous than Necrons themselves. I got a bit carried away and bought 3 of these instead of just 1. But as much as I clearly like these Venomcrawler kits, these spiky bits are just far too flimsy. Sure, they look good, but they fall apart really easily. These were all bought second hand from eBay, then I moved house twice, so about half of the spikes have already snapped off, and this is long before they've ever had the chance to be moved around on the tabletop. There's no chance we're pinning these spiky bits back on, and as well as the inevitable wear and tear they've suffered, I have also stolen away their trophy racks for use on War Dog conversions. But before we can get to fixing those broken spiky bits, we've got to get these Venomcrawlers onto some suitably battle damaged bases. I'm not too fussed on spending all day converting a load of really elaborate bases, so my first step is to mark out where this Venomcrawler will be coming into contact with the base. Using a metallic pen, I draw over any areas that I want to appear cratered, and then I proceed to fire up the Dremel. Everything then immediately proceeded to go wrong, as I drilled out the first crater with a total disregard for my cutting mat. The resulting arrangement of drill holes looks kind of like a heart or a thumbs up. I folded over an old version of the script to save my cutting mat from certain peril, and then I got back to destroying this innocent 100mm round base with a power tool. With the outlines hold and our base looking to have much less structural integrity as a result, break out your plastic snips and cut away what remains of the plastic. And while the Dremel is still plugged in, don't forget to smooth down those edges left by the initial drill bit. With our Venomcrawler's base now looking significantly damaged, I mark out some plasticard around the profile of the base, and then I eyeball it with a scalpel so our incision is about half a centimetre in from the line, giving us a piece of plasticard that fits snugly inside of the base. Ensure that you're in a well ventilated area, then glue on some rough shapes of leftover plasticard, and then at long last proceed to throw everything at everything with whatever plastic glue you have at hand. I only seem to have this precision plastic glue from Games Workshop, and quick drying Mr. Hobby. I'm not sure why I don't have any regular plastic glue, which would have probably made this task a little easier. Nevertheless, the end result of our pungent plastic shenanigans is a number of messy pits all over the base. To give these pits some texture, I retrieve a sheet of embroidery mesh. I like to figure out what the ruins on my custom bases were used for before I make them. In this case, this is meant to look as if it's part of an industrial cooling system, as if the mesh is attached to some source of immense heat, which it then dissipates into the ground. This cratered effect gives the base a more three-dimensional feel than just using a flat desert scape, and as a bonus, this is also really easy to do. To level off the edges of the craters a bit, I apply a bit of model filler around said edges. I then poke the filler with a stick for quite some time. There's little to no technique required here, as this will all just be getting halfway buried in sand anyway. We just want to give those edges a slightly more believable base texture. Once you're done poking stuff with a stick, leave those pies to cool down next to an open window. You know when the model filler is properly set when it is no longer giving off dizzying fumes. I managed to swipe all 3 of these for about a tenner each. That's about 13 Murica dollars or 18 Aussie dollars, just in case you were wondering. They were selling for next to nothing in the months after Shadowspear was released, but as a consequence of our snazzy shopping, we can now see just how bad this Venomcrawler is at trying to stand on their own base. Bear in mind that these guys were constructed by random people on eBay, so I bear absolutely none of the blame for assembling these legs like a fool. I cut the rocks from their feet, then whittle down the damaged forelimb until it closely resembles the talon located on the opposite forelimb. I then level the minor height discrepancy with some sandpaper so that all of those legs can finally make contact with the rock and the base. The first thing you might notice when you look at these guys is that without their trophy racks, these Venomcrawlers do look a little bit sad, so let's cheer them up with a good variety of spiky bits. I begin by digging out some rams from the Chaos Rhino kit, snipping away at the individual spikes, although in truth I don't really need to. Instead I just gathered up a pile of these broken spiky bits, as they are simply leftovers from the reckless conversions I did when I was a teenager. So it's really good that these pieces are finally getting some use for something close to their intended purpose. Luckily for us, this wide band of trim gives us loads of space to work with, and these square pieces of trim in particular give us 4 clear spaces in which we can place our spikes. This particular spiky bit originated from the out of production Cities of Death range, and provided that you could manage to get your hands on 4 of these, you will be able to give your Venomcrawler a particularly edgy looking mohawk. I like how these spikes are themselves studded with tiny spikes. Seeing as I'll be painting these guys in a sort of Emperor's Children colour scheme, this seems appropriately kinky. Speaking of which, I turn this Venomcrawler into a unicorn, denoting this particular Venomcrawler as a sort of squad leader. Or maybe the demon in this engine is just far more vain than the other two, and simply wants to wear a really big hat. I've used a load of chunkier spiky bits to fix these Venomcrawlers, as these old spiky bits have fairly thick points of contact, so when they're attached to the model with plastic glue, these spiky bits are basically indestructible, unlike all of those skinny parts they'll be replacing. I was going to use these serrated ram blades, looted from what I think was an old rhino. They would give us a wicked third variety of mohawk, but with such a narrow point of contact, and no chance of pinning into this hollow body, I'm just going to use the last of those spiky bits from the Cities of Death range to do a bit of a sequel to the unicorn guy. I was going to graft the other Drukhari Raider Prow onto a second Venomcrawler, which would have given us 2 unicorns, but I think this part is a bit too chunky for such a small vehicle. So for now I'll hold on to that part, just in case another one of my Chaos Knights decides to become a unicorn. Last but not least, I repair the trophy rail on this guy's head by tidying up any remnants from the broken spikes with my Dremel and gluing on some individual spiky bits. I think I got these from the Chaos Spawn box set. With all of the repairs complete, our Venomcrawlers are almost ready for spraying. All they need now is a little sand on their bases. I use a slaty blend of sand and stones. If you're crazy enough to do it, then use a teaspoon to shovel the sand onto flat and exposed areas, being careful to blend those crater edges without totally burying them with sand. Throw on some more rocks to make everything a little more cluttered and random, and then prepare yourself for some hot, capillary action. This is basically the superglue equivalent of the quick drying Mr. Hobby I use. It has spectacular flow qualities, and so it flows through the sand without any effort, which makes this task both quick and quite satisfying to behold. I hit these guys with Chaos Black spray, and then I sprayed them with a coat of white primer, to give our Venomcrawlers a decent balance of contrast and shadow. Once these guys are painted, the tainted host will have some much needed allies, as they currently have no practical way of engaging the Cornate Night House we're building. We will be batch painting our way through these guys, as well as tackling the nightmarish organisational task of re-armouring the 2 Forge Fiends I pillaged in the previous War Dog Kit Bash video. I like the idea of a demon engine detachment of black and pink craziness versus Khorne's angry red horde of Chaos Knights. That's definitely going to make for some interesting battle reports. I managed to bury a few of these smaller craters with sand and superglue. Some of them still make for some pretty convincing small craters, giving the bases an interesting 3-dimensional feel. I suppose I figured that the space inside of the base was just going to waste. I like the way that the mesh looks, half buried in the sand. I used this pointy Chaos Rock from the Chaos Terminator Lord set to prop up this guy's leg talon thing. Seeing as he already had a fetching unicorn hat, it only seemed fair to give him a particularly swish looking rock for his base. Although it sucks that we missed this mold mark, I like the way the gravel flows onto the rocky surface. I wanted the ground to seem uneven and chewed up in a short space of time, and I think I have my Dremel to thank for that. You can totally drill out these types of bases with a pin vise, although it will take you quite a while to do this on larger bases. I know this from a lot of experience. While it can seem tricky to repair these newer Demon engines, it's not impossible to get them back into fighting shape, with the help of a few old parts you probably forgot you even had. I'm Dave from Warpsong Games. Please convince the like button to remove their shoes and then guide them into a punji pit made of all your priceless Venomcrawlers. And subscribe for more content like this in the near future.